Communication in change management is the number one thing that you need to do. I remember working in particular with one organisation, and the communication problems were there because the senior manager had kind of come in new to the role right at the beginning of COVID, and the organisation was very siloed in the way that they sort of structured. The challenge in that organisation is that even though it was one organisation, there was actually 4 separate sections underneath it, and so they operated almost like 4 individual entities. Now, when the new manager came in at the top of all of that, those managers were used to doing their own thing and actually communicating in their own way, and there was no consistency. Now, that caused a big problem because then the information that was coming from the top about what was happening was not being distilled in the same way all the way down. So one of the things that I did when I was called in to help the organisation was had a look at how the information was communicated, like what are the ways that information was distilled. So it needs to be done in written, it needs to be consistently done in that verbal as well, but there also needed to be some feedback mechanisms, because what had happened was this siloing effect from that organisation had meant that the sort of sub-leaders in that had kind of misrepresented what it was that the senior manager and the board were actually trying to achieve. Therein is already a big problem. So part of that communication process has to actually be, how do you do strategic, broad communication, things that are very consistent, and then how do we ensure that those messages are getting passed down in exactly the same way all the way to the bottom of the organisation, making sure that the information about what it is that we're trying to achieve is consistent. So there's a couple of ways that we need to do that. One is about how we distill the information, but then it's also getting the feedback to ensure that what people are perceiving is there is actually where we're trying to go. So you have to do it both ways. Most leaders just do it top down. They're not actually going and testing whether or not what they've done has actually strategically achieved what they were trying to achieve, because they haven't even tested whether or not it's being consistently delivered across the organisation. This organisation only had, 80 people, and there were still these very individual silos. So when you get them all together in a room, they all had very different perspectives on what was happening, why the change was even coming about, and as a result, some areas were really cranky about it and other areas were really happy. So that importance of communication and making sure that there is that consistency both across the organisation and all the way down to the top, and checking it, is a really important element of any change management process.